welcome to the 1000 Authors Show. I'm Vicky Fraser, and this is my husband, Joe.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so first of all, before anything else, very important cake announcement. This afternoon, I made a rhubarb cake, and it was really good, wasn't it?
It was good rhubarb cake.
It was a good rhubarb cake.
It took nearly twice as long to cook as the recipe suggested.
That's because our oven is crap. Yes. Everything takes, it says, bake for 40 minutes, and it will take an hour in our oven. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Anyway, it's a rhubarb cake, and it's really good, and we've got rhubarb growing in our garden, and now I'm going to make a lot of rhubarb cakes.
That
Awesome.
works for me.
Yep, it's going to be great. Okay, so, Joe, what are you reading this week?
I'm reading a book called I Am Pilgrim by Terry Hayes. It's
a Richard and Judy book club book.
I didn't know that when I picked it up.
It's on my Kindle, isn't it?
Yeah. You know how when people recommend things that you should watch on Netflix, you desperately try not to watch them?
All right.
Probably
that was a jibe at me.
Kind of how I feel about, Richard and Judy book clubs.
Okay.
Which is just me being snobby really.
Well, anyway, what do you think of I Am Pilgrim?
A bit ambivalent, to be honest. It's a little bit like CIA, FBI, superhero agent chasing down terrorists who are scooping up people's eyeballs and making smallpox.
Oh, okay.
And the whole thing just feels a little bit like a Bourne movie.
Okay.
In a kind of shallow and not very cerebral way.
Gosh, you are a snob. Okay, cool. Well, we can talk about the structure of that story if you like in a bit, because that is what this week's episode is all about. What makes a good story? Anyway, we'll come to that shortly. I have been reading This is the Story of a Happy Marriage by Anne Patchett, which is a collection of her essays in a kind of memoir format, and I absolutely love it. I mean, I love everything that I've read by Anne Patchett so far.
Who is Anne Patchett and what does she write?
She writes fiction and essays, so she's written for many, many publications over the years, like The New Yorker and various magazines and columnists and columns and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just a wonderful, wonderful writer. And she wrote The Magician's Assistant.
Okay.
Yeah, which was the first book of hers that I read. And so now I'm reading this, and now I've instructed our local bookshop to order in everything by Anne Patchett so that I can just buy it all. You there. Stock these books. Well, no, they love it because they're making money. But yeah, I'm loving it. It's beautiful. It's not a novel. It's a collection of essays, and it's just a delight. It's just a delight from start to finish. I've loved all of it. I've literally just finished it. So and the next book that I am reading, I can't remember what it is because it's upstairs and I haven't opened it yet. So next week you can find out what I'll be reading.
New book next week. And
the non-fiction that I'm reading is Anti-Fragile by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, and it's heavy going, if I'm honest.
Okay.
It's heavy going. I am enjoying it because the ideas are really interesting. I can't decide whether his writing style is driving me up the wall or if actually I'm quite enjoying it. Was this the one who made the statement that important things shouldn't be easy to read or something? You should have to work hard to read this. That's not how he put it. But yeah, that was a simplified version. But he made an argument that if you want people to really consider a message or an argument, then making it super easy to read and skim over actually doesn't encourage people to do that. And I can see his point. Because if I am... And I don't... That's not the same thing as making things difficult to read. It's not the same thing as making things difficult to read. Mm-hmm. But he does have an interesting writing style. He's made me laugh out loud on a couple of occasions. And at other times I'm just like, what are you on about? So, yeah. But the ideas behind it are interesting. Anyway, it's interesting. It's a heavy read. Not something to kind of pick up and think you're going to flip through on a beach. Okay. So, yeah. And this week at the Dingle, we've been up to all sorts of things. We have... we've got more new windows which went in, which was a bit of a surprise because we forgot that they were happening. Yeah, forgot about that. Forgot we'd bought them. Forgot we'd paid the deposit on them. Forgot we'd have to pay the people to put them in. We'd have to pay the people to put them in when they arrived. Yeah, all of that good stuff.
That was fun.
So if you want to head to my website, I have a couple of masterclasses on sale. I have a coaching course starting.
The world's most expensive windows.
Yeah, and so we've also been really crafty in the garden. We've built a table out of reclaimed scaffold planks and painters' planks, which is absolutely beautiful, massively over-engineered, enormous and wonderful. And
it is definitely not going to blow away in the next storm.
No. And we have... Somebody gave us an old cast iron bathtub when we moved in. It's been in the garden for 5 years. And we thought it wasn't really nice enough for the style that we wanted in our new bathroom that we're building. And so I have scrubbed the outside, painted the outside, and it is now a beautiful planter. We built a dry stone wall around it. It looks gorgeous, doesn't it? So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. And I love making things. I love making things with my hands and seeing what I've created and kind of walking away and being like, oh, that's a good day well spent.
Cool.
Yeah. That was an anecdote. I'll come back to why that's important in a moment. So yeah, what makes a good story, Joe?
Huh?
But you know a good story when you hear it, right?
Yes.
And you know a bad story when you hear it.
Yes. You need to not be able to guess the whole rest of the story from an early portion of it.
Yes, but I will also submit that if a story is well put together, that doesn't matter, because I've watched and read The Martian by Andy Weir several times, and every single time I'm like on the edge of my seat being like, ah, and I know what happens. I know what happens at the end because I've seen it and I've read it, and every single time I'm like, oh my God. So, and that to me is a sign of, and like I'll go back to Amelie time and time again because that's an amazing film. And so, yes, okay, if you've got a film like Sixth Sense or Kaiser Soze, what's that one?
Usual Suspects.
The Usual Suspects. Yeah, if you haven't seen The Usual Suspects and somebody tells you the ending, I was going to say punch them in the face, but I do not advocate violence. Don't ever speak to them again, because that's a terrible thing to do to a person. But yeah, with a film like that, a story like that, you don't want to know the ending because it just ruins it. Mm-hmm. And you'll be like, ugh. Because when you can, it's really cool to look back at the story and pick out the clues once you've, yeah. That's all I'm going to say about that. Because even though like The Usual Suspects was made, 30 years ago, I still feel like there are people out there that probably haven't seen it. So... Anyway, so stories. Good stories, bad stories, boring stories. What makes a good story? That's what we're going to talk about briefly
What
today.
makes a good story?
Well, the structure, Joe. That's what matters.
Right.
Not the writing, surprisingly. Although if it's unreadable, that's a problem. But I'm going to, like, one of my favourite examples is, and I feel like I should be nicer to Dan Brown, but one of my favourite examples is Dan Brown. I don't think he's a very good writer. Like,
no, I think he gets a lot of stick for not being a very good writer.
But he's a bloody good storyteller, because I really enjoyed the Da Vinci Code to the extent that I could kind of, as a writer, and a reader, I could kind of tell that he wasn't the best writer in the world, but that story had me gripped all the way through. Yeah. So the writing did not matter. And so you can be really snobby, and, a lot of writers are really snobby about people being good writers or bad writers. But more important is, are you a good storyteller? And if you can be a good writer as well, then all the better. But if you're not writing literary fiction, and Dan Brown is not writing literary fiction, it doesn't matter so much. You just want a really, really rip-roaring story. And the reason that his story works is because he understands how to write them and how to construct them. And so the reason we love good stories is because they are structured properly, and the reason we don't like bad stories, or we'll just give up on them and forget them, is because somebody's messed with the structure or missed something out and it just doesn't work. Or they've told an anecdote, and so story versus anecdote. So an anecdote is what I just told you about the work that we did at the Dingle. It was like, it's a little bit of a fun update, we've done this, we've done that. It didn't really have a point, it didn't have any structure, it was just a bit of a fun anecdote. Anecdotes are fine. You can tell, I hear and tell anecdotes all the time that are interesting or that make me laugh or whatever. But it's not a story, it's not something that you could put in a book or in a film or in a TV episode and expect people to be gripped by, because that it's not serving that purpose.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how do you define an anecdote? What are the defining features of an anecdote?
Anecdote is just a bunch of facts. You're telling people stuff. So I could tell you about the fact that my aloe vera plant is, sitting over there looking a bit sorry for itself, and poor old Vera, blah, blah, blah. I'm not very good at looking after plants, That's not a story, that is an anecdote. Not even a very interesting anecdote. But what we just told you about what we're doing in the dingle garden is also an anecdote. It doesn't really have a point to it, doesn't really have a structure, but hopefully it was a little bit more interesting, so I know that people are following what we're doing with the house.
Okay.
So that's an anecdote. A story, on the other hand, has a specific structure that you have to use. It has to have the structure in that order for it to work. So would you like to...
Hard and fast rules must be in this order?
Yeah.
This is the structure?
Yeah. If you mess with the structure at your peril.
Oof. Because not often there's a hard and fast, this is the way it's got to be.
People mess with it all the time, and the people that mess with it are usually the ones that write a book or a film that doesn't work, because they've either mushed the order around too much, or they have missed an element out completely. You can play with the order a little bit, in the sense that I'm a big fan of jumping into the action, right into the action at the beginning and then circling back.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, you've still got the elements of the story in the right order. It might be that you have part of one element at the beginning and then you'll come back to it a bit later on, but everything is still there, and you're leading your reader through from where the character is to how they change, and that's the key. It's the change that the main character goes through.
Okay.
Right? Because that's what we're really, really interested in. And it's not the same as plot either. Story is not the same as plot, and people get that mixed up all the time as well. So, and I can give you an example of that from two of my favouriteest films, The Matrix and The Martian. I've got to think about films beginning with M and starting with the, obviously. So The Matrix is not about robot overlords taking over the world and turning humans into batteries. That's just the plot. That's not the story. The plot is incidental. It kind of moves the story along.
Right.
But the story is about Neo and his awakening and his realisation that the world is not as it seems. What's he going to do about it? And how does he change towards the end?
Okay.
With a little bit of a romance thrown in, because, he gets the girl and all that. Does that make sense?
I think so, yes.
That story, that narrative, the story of Neo and his change, that could have been facilitated by any number of plots. It could have been... It happened to be computers that became sentient and enslaved humanity, but it could have been equally aliens coming down and taking over the Earth, as happened in Independence Day, or anything like that. So that the plot moves the story along. The plot gives people a reason to do things.
Right.
But the story is how we change. And The Martian is another good example. So The Martian is, you look at it and you think, it's about sending people to Mars, and then a guy gets stuck there on his own, and what's he going to do?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what the story's about. The story is about loneliness and human ingenuity and survival, and how he manages to stay alive and how he changes.
Sure.
And that's what's really interesting. Without the human element, these stories are boring. And you can watch, how many action films have there been that have been like plot, 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 and have just been...
don't care.
You just don't care, yeah. Snakes on a Plane, for example, which is good for a bit of a laugh. But I remember watching that film and being like, I literally didn't care if all of the characters in that film died, because I just didn't care. And so, does that make sense?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Cool. So, do you wanna know the structure then?
So, go on. Give me the structure.
So, there's a couple of structures that I'm gonna share in this podcast that I think you need to know. One of them...
Both for story.
Both for story, yes. The first one is more for a book, and if you're writing a book, the structure of a book, it's really important to have a reader journey.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a good place to start. It's like, where is your reader at the beginning of the book, and where do you want to take them? Where are they going to be at the end, and where do they need to stop on the way? That's a really good way to start thinking about your ideas, especially in terms of non-fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, and I always encourage people to start there. It's like, why are you writing this book? Who's it for? What do you want them to get out of it, basically? And there's a bunch of other stuff as well, which, I go into and elsewhere. But for the story structure, for what makes a really good story, beyond the reader journey, or, deeper than the reader journey, is 5 things. So Bernadette Dewar calls these 5 things the 5 C's.
Okay.
And I call them something, I call them this, what I'm about to go through, but they're essentially the same thing. Other people call them other things as well, but they are basically the 5 elements of a story that you need if you want your story to work. So, should we go through it?
Yes. So Bernadette Jiwa calls them the 5 C's.
Yes.
And the first one is backstory.
Yeah, but this is what I call them.
Oh, this one, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So she calls them context, catalyst, complication, change, and consequence, which is
5 C's.
5 C's. I call them this because these make more sense to me and they're easier for me to remember. So backstory is like, you need to know the context of what your character is. So what is their world? What is their life like?
Yeah.
Where are they? Where are they right now? What's their situation? You don't have to start your story with that, but it does have to be there quite early on. And you do have to give people at least an overview quite early on so that you understand who we're talking about here.
Okay.
The second thing is the inciting incident.
The thing.
The thing, yeah.
The thing what happens.
The thing what happens.
The storm that makes all your mates bugger off back to Earth.
Exactly, that's the Martian. So the inciting incident on that. Let's deconstruct the Martian. So the backstory of the Martian is that we've sent the first peopled mission to Mars.
Half a dozen people digging up
6
rocks and
doing various. So they've all got a different role. They're doing various experiments.
growing plants and things.
They've got the habitat thing all set up.
It all looks pretty cool, pretty chilled.
They were supposed to be there for another 2 or 3 weeks, I think,
Yeah,
were they?
yeah.
And then a big storm came in. Wrecked a whole bunch of stuff, and they had to get off the planet because otherwise their
leaving vehicle would fall over, and that would be that.
Yeah, that's not good when the leaving vehicle falls over. And one of the astronauts, Mark, oh god, what's his name?
Wahlberg.
No, what's his name?
Watney.
Mark Watney. Oh my god, Mark Watney. He gets killed, or his fellow astronauts think he gets killed
In the storm, on the way out.
Maybe I should say here, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen, I mean, that happens like within the first 30 seconds, so...
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not going to go through the whole book, are we? We're going to, the backstory is they're on Mars, everybody has to leave, they think he's dead, he's not dead.
Yes. That's the inciting incident is the storm.
The inciting incident is a storm.
It's the storm, and very specifically, his crewmates thinking that he's dead, which is a reasonable assumption, because... all of the instruments said he was. And then they left because they had to leave because otherwise they would have all been dead. And they are on the way back to Earth, and then it cuts to Mark Watney not being dead.
Not dead.
Not dead. On Mars, on his own. Shit.
Yeah.
So that's the inciting incident.
Next up comes the choice.
The choice, yeah. So there's a choice for the main character to make. And also... because stories are often more complicated, there's choices for other people to make too, and there are choices throughout The Martian that other people make, choices of what to do, who to tell, all of that kind of thing. But Mark Watney's choice is, you know what, I can either accept that I'm going to die here,
Lie down and die.
lie down and die, which is not an unreasonable proposition, or he can say, you know what, no, I have a lot of stuff here. I'm gonna do my best to live, basically. And so that's the choice. The decision that he makes is to live, and to do as much as he can to live. And then he has stuff to do. So, I've missed one out there. 1, 2, 3. Anyway. So the decision, and there's also within that decision is going to be obstacles and challenges. And his main, he's on Mars on his own, so there's quite a lot of obstacles and challenges to overcome.
He's got issues around food, he's got issues around heat, he's got issues around other storms coming in and trashing the place. He's got a lot of issues. But communication.
His main obstacle, I would say, is he needs to get in touch with Earth somehow, because if nobody knows he's alive, then there is, there's not much point in him doing all this stuff. So that was a decision he made. And then the final one is the consequence / resolution, or transformation, as I like to call it. So it's how does the character change? How does he change from who he was at the beginning to who he is at the end? And how has that happened? What has the transformation been? And it needs to go deeper than just, oh, he didn't die. Because actually you see how resilient he is, or I would have said resilient, but anti-fragile, I will say now, having read Anti-Fragile. He has been made stronger by this. He has been made smarter. He has learned stuff. He has made decisions and changed as a person. Is he going to be an astronaut again? What's he going to do when he does get back to Earth, if he gets back to Earth? what's going to happen. And so that is how The Martian has been laid out as and it's a really good story. It's a bloody good book. It's a really entertaining film. I've watched the film 3 or 4 times now, and I know I'm going to watch it again soon because I just love it.
Yeah.
It's such a well-constructed story. So does that make sense? I
think so, yes. It helps going through, the backstory, the incident, the choice, the decision, and the consequences.
Yeah. And
I like it.
Like anything else, you need to know the rules before you can break them. So one thing I will say is that you need all of those things. If you take out any of those elements, your story will not work.
Mm-hmm.
But you can play around with the order and how you write it. Don't do that if you've never deliberately written a story before.
Write a story in that order.
Yeah, write a story in that order.
At least a few times before you start chopping it up.
Yeah, and then you can go back and play with it. But this is something that I'm working on at the moment as well. I'm working on making my storytelling better. I'm doing the story skills workshop it's run by Bernadette Dewar, Seth Godin's thing. She calls them, I've always called them something else. I've seen other people call them other things. She calls them the 5 C's, which is cool. It's nice to have an easy thing to remember.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to remember backstory, the thing that happens, the choice that has to be made, the decision / obstacle, the challenge that comes up, and then the consequence of resolution. Every story needs that. In that order, or they won't work. Simples.
Really simple. And now you know that, you can look out for it in the things that you watch and you read.
And you will as well, and you'll be like, oh, that's that, and that's that, and that's that. And sometimes things cross over as well, and you'll be like, oh, is that the incident, or was that the incident? It's like, well, maybe it's both of them. Or maybe it's something that you haven't seen at all, but it'll be there. If the story works, it'll be there. So what's wrong with I Am Pilgrim then?
Okay, looking at that structure, yes, we've got some backstory, yes, we've got some inciting incident, we've got some choices. I guess we're in this kind of choice area at the moment. There's going to be a lot of adversity. I can tell already there's going to be a lot of running around deserts. And there's going to be lots of drama in airports.
Okay.
Possibly train stations, that kind of thing. It's okay. It feels like a book I've read a few times before, to be honest.
Because it's a structure that works well, and a formula that works well.
Maybe.
Because people like familiar. They say.
Yeah, it feels like book 7. You know those kind of detective books that people read, where there's like 23 of them and they're all the same.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like I'm in the middle of one of the middle ones of those.
And this is the thing. I think this is the genius of writing series like that, is that sometimes they do get very formulaic, and you're like, oh, I'm a bit bored of this now. But ultimately, when an author finds a structure that works and a character that works and all the rest of it, why would you ditch it? The genius then is being able to keep it fresh enough so that you're not just like, have I not read this book before?
I guess that's. Your author's got a choice to make, haven't they? Are they riding the gravy train and selling some product, or are they, writing literature? And if they're, it's fine to make some product and sell it. That's cool. I think that's what a lot of people do. I got no problem with anybody doing any of that. It's like, you write what you write. I think also a lot of writers, when they find that series that sells really well, I think they find it easier to write the books once they've got into the swing of it, then gives them a bit of leisure to maybe write the books that they're not sure will do so well, because that's a bit more of a risk. The mortgage has been paid by then. Yeah. And so I got no problem with people paying the mortgage and turning out stuff that people want because their readers want it. Yeah, that's it. If there's a market for it, then why not? Yeah. So one of my favourite series of books is the Shopaholic books, and I love them. They're smarter than your average chick lit, I guess, but also they're you kind of know what's going to happen because the character's very familiar and the story's very familiar, and I don't care if I just want to take my brain out and read something silly. You're lying on a beach reading nonsense. Yeah, that's one of my go-tos. It's good fun. Okay, so what's the takeaway? Tell your story. Have a structure. Sorry, I didn't really give you much for that, did I? No. I don't even know what we're talking about next week. What would you like to talk about next week? Oh my God. I'm just the sidekick. Don't make me make decisions. I could make a decision. Okay. I don't know. Shall I interview you? What? Why don't you write a book? Oh my God. Say you'll write a book. Don't pick on me. Live on the podcast. Why? It's fun. No.
Just no.
What? No to being picked on the podcast, yes.
You don't want to be interviewed?
I mean, you can interview me if you like.
What should I interview you about?
I don't know.
Writing.
Well, you can't make me be the interviewer and tell you what to ask me.
Just again.
Interviewee.
Okay, well, we're going to be talking about something next week, and it'll be cool.
Hopefully, it won't be me.
In the meantime, though, I am kicking off the Weird and Wonderful Book Society. It starts on Monday. If you're listening to this on Saturday, it starts on Monday, July the 5th. I've already had the welcome, but if you are a last-minute Luther, then you may still join us. If I've got spaces left. I'm sure I'll have spaces left. You may still join us, and we will start in earnest on July the 5th, and I will get you all caught up before Monday morning.
Nice.
That is my promise to you.
So what is it?
The Weird and Wonderful Book Society.
What is it?
3 months. I will take you from... it's just a thing. I will take you from your big idea to your first draft done. And depending on how fast you can work and how much time you can put into it, maybe you'll get your edit done, maybe you'll get further. Mm-hmm. But I want you to have your first draft in your hands by the end of this 3 months, at the very least.
Nice.
And it's a little group of amazing people. There is a call once a week for Q&A. There is hot seats once a month where you can submit work to kind of go through in more detail, or, you know, if you've got a specific challenge or question to dig into. There are also office hours via Voxer where you can ask me anything like in real time for 2 hours on a Tuesday afternoon. And you also get bonus membership of Team Moxie for the live writing sessions to get the book done.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited about the people who are already booked onto the course, and I can't wait to read the books that they are going to write. It's so exciting.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how do people join that?
They can email me, vicky@vickyfraser.com, and I will send you all the details. And if you want to hop on a call over the weekend, I will do that too.
Cool.
And yeah, that's it really. Cool. And we'll be back same time next week. If you like this podcast, go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from and subscribe. Mm-hmm. And rate us.
5 stars.
And send us a review, please.
5 stars.
And and share us.
With everybody.
With people that you think might enjoy it. Not with people that you think might hate it.
Yeah.
That's like sending people glitter. We like glitter, but not everybody likes it. It's not eco-friendly. We're eco-friendly though.
Oh my god.
Okay, should we go?
Let's finish.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.